Through Mr. Mayor, it is 5:30 p.m. If you don't mind, we'll begin live streaming and recording.
Yes, of course.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 5:30 p.m. and I can confirm we've begun live streaming and recording. You may begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, council, residents. I see that we have indeed quorum, just barely. So I call to order this meeting, this public meeting under the Planning Act on this Wednesday, June 14th at 5:30 p.m. As usual at this time, to begin all meetings, we have a member of council read the land acknowledgement statement, and tonight that is myself. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. And next, we have the adoption of agenda, and I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda be amended to add item 5.2.1 to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. Any?
No problem. It's just an amendment put forth by Councillor Olson to add the addendum item 5.2.1.
Okay. So any debate on the amendment? And not seeing any?
Excellent. For the vote, Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the agenda as amended. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda for the June 14th public meeting under the Planning Act special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. On the agenda as amended, any comments? Not seeing any?
Thank you. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item number 4, being disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest in general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I have so noted. Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item number 5, being review and update of the Town of Pelham official plan, and I will now read some opening remarks into the record. Town of Pelham official plan conformity review and update. Section 26(3) of the Planning Act requires that before an official plan is updated, Council holds a special meeting of Council to discuss the revisions that may be required. This statutory public meeting fulfills the town's statutory obligation under Section 26(3) of the Planning Act. The town is in the process of conducting an official plan review and update in accordance with the Planning Act. The process will result in the creation of a new official plan. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. This meeting will be the first of a series of public engagement sessions, and as the town develops a new official plan. No decisions are being made at this time, and staff are anticipating a draft version of the new official plan to be available in late 2023, early 2024 for public review and comment. It is important to note that this public meeting is the first of a series of public consultation opportunities throughout the official plan review and update process, and input from the community is crucial to understanding the needs and wants of residents. To you, Mr. Mayor, we do have our consultants here with us this evening that will be presenting the official plan review.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bender and Ms. Salis, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Junkin. My great pleasure to be here this evening, or late afternoon, early evening with you My name is Greg Bender, and I work for a firm called WSP. I also have with me this evening Andrea Saleze, who is also accompanying me on this particular project. Just to apologize, this is not how I normally talk, but thankfully Andrea is going to be doing the lion's share of the presentation, so you don't have to hear this sad voice through the whole presentation. I do want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you this today. It is a very important meeting and certainly serves as a kickoff to a very exciting process to certainly update your official plan. Just as of note, not that it has anything to do with the project, it is a special project for me because I actually grew up in Font Hill. So I've been very looking forward to this project, and I look forward to working with all of you and members of the public to complete this project with the town. Next slide, Andrea. So what we want to talk to you about during this presentation is why we're here as part of the statutory public meeting. Talk to you about who we are and who's part of the project team. And just for the context of members of the public who might not be aware, what is an official plan, why we're doing an official plan review, and some of the major influences for this particular project. What are the influences from changing provincial policy, which we all know changes on a daily basis, and sort of certain local key drivers that we know from being on the ground, but also certainly information we receive from staff. We're going to talk to you about sort of what the review and technical conformity review will look like, the supporting studies that will feed into this particular project, what our engagement programs look like and what we're recommending, the big sort of moves, the influences as part of this project, and the next steps for the duration of the project. So why we're here as part of the statutory public meeting, I know Madam Clerk read some important narrative to support this meeting. But this is a meeting under the Planning Act that requires the town to sort of kick off this particular process. There's a section in the Planning Act called Section 26, which is a section that sort of identifies the need for municipalities to review their official plans on an ongoing basis. Certainly through this particular process, it's important to have this meeting because we want to hear from members of council in terms of sort of the major influences or items that they would like considered through this particular process, but also members of the public to use this as an opportunity for additional consideration of what this process and this program should be taking into consideration in terms of how the official plan could be updated to take that into effect. And again, it is a requirement of the Planning Act to hold this meeting, and certainly provides that, again, formal kickoff to move into the additional processes. So in terms of the project team, I'll start with the town because that's more important than us. We're working with very closely with Barb and Lindsay, who I'm sure you know very well on the planning team. And we're working with them and meeting with them on an ongoing basis to understand and making sure that we're maintaining our schedule and ensuring that we're capturing everything that we need to do as part of the various deliverables that we have or will be submitting. So we as WSP, we a very large multidisciplinary firm, but we also have one of the largest planning departments in the country. And we do official plan reviews, among other sort of planning studies throughout the province and country. And certainly, I've been retained by the town to prepare and sort of a technical conformity review to aid in the preparation of a new official plan. And as I mentioned, I'm Greg Bender, the project manager from WSP. We have Andrea, who's going to be delivering the majority of the presentation, so you don't have to listen to me. And we also have some other people supporting, including Will Lemond, who's a planner in our group as well. So now I'm going to turn over to Andrea, and she'll walk you through the balance of the presentation.
Thanks, Greg, and hello to everyone who's listening in today and to members of council. So those that are not familiar with an official plan and what it does and how it helps the town to grow, an official plan, it really is a blueprint for how a municipality is going to grow in the short, medium, and long term. It's a document that spans the horizon of about 30 years, but it's a high-level policy document, so it's not a zoning bylaw. And for the most part, it directs growth. So it speaks to things like land use, where certain types of land uses, what they will look like, where they will be. It speaks to infrastructure and things like community services, And it's a pretty broad document in terms of what it contains, and we'll be talking a little bit about what those thematic areas are that we've been looking at in more detail. An official plan includes schedules, so they are a visualization of the policies within the plan, and they do a number of things. They identify where various land uses are in the town, and they talk to a number of other things like active transportation, as an example, or where natural heritage resources might be and where they need to be protected. As I mentioned before, official plans are high-level policy documents, but they're implemented through other planning tools. So one such tool is the town zoning bylaw, which after an official plan is approved and adopted, a municipality they need to update their zoning bylaw to be in conformity with the direction and the policy updates in the plan. Official plans are also implemented through policy documents such as secondary plans or tertiary plans and design guidelines. So just a little fun fact about the town of Pelham's official plan. It was adopted by council back in 2012 and approved in 2014. So we talked a little bit about the purpose of the official plan review already, and just to provide a bit more information about why we're doing that now, why the town's undertaking that now. As you may know, there's been several changes that have occurred to the provincial planning framework in the last couple of years, especially, but certainly since the town's OP was approved back in 2014. Niagara Region's official plan was also approved by the ministry recently in November of 2022. So a local municipality needs to conform with the upper tiers regional official plan within about a year of adoption. And so that timeline takes us to about 2023, or roughly within that time frame. So in terms of, though, specifically those provincial, regional, and local drivers or policy documents that we need to take a look at through this process and what the town needs to take a look at. Some of you may have heard of the Planning Act, and really the Planning Act is legislation that guides and provides the legal basis for a number of things and guides land use planning in the province of Ontario, but specifically as it relates to the official plan, it provides direction for when official plans need to be updated. There's also the provincial policy statement. So as we may already know, the PPS there's a draft consolidated PPS out there for discussion that consolidates the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. But really what that document does is set out provincial planning goals and objectives and specific direction in terms of how municipalities are to achieve those goals and direction. So although the list in bullets there on the screen is not exhaustive, some key components of the PPS, which is an acronym we planners like to use for the provincial policy statement, is really emphasizing planning for, so an emphasis on planning for intensification and transit supportive development, and this is in an effort to curb urban sprawl. And certainly that ties into the second bullet, which is preparing for the impacts of a changing climate. One way we can do that is to intensify and grow up as opposed to growing out. So other documents that we are taking a look at, and which we've already taken a look at through the background report, is the growth plan, which is a short form for a place to grow, growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And so there's some proposed changes to that document, and certainly in an effort to improve housing affordability. So some key components to the growth plan, which speak to the goals and objectives of the PPS, is directing growth to areas such as settlement areas, but focusing that growth within delineated built-up areas as an example, strategic growth areas, and certainly to areas that have existing or planned transit. So that's growth to help support that investment. The growth plan also speaks to supporting complete communities, and there's a variety of ways in which a municipality can do that. One way is to take a look and consider a variety of built forms, including multi-unit residential buildings. The Greenbelt Plan is another provincial plan, and in case people who are listening in have not heard of that document before, really this is a document that really seeks to protect the agricultural land base and natural heritage and hydrological features within lands within the Greater Toronto Hamilton area and parts of Niagara region. So there's three main components that apply to the town within the Greenbelt Plan, and that's the natural heritage system, the agricultural system, and the water resource system. And we'll be talking a little bit about that today and in more detail in the documents that we have produced and will be producing for the town as part of phase one. And then finally, there's the Niagara Escarpment Plan. So this document really provides additional and specific protections for the escarpment. And they go beyond the policies of the growth plan and the Greenbelt Plan, and it's in support of matters such as clean air, clean drinking water, recreational activities, and it responds to climate change. And there's three designations within the Niagara Escarpment Plan that apply to the town of Pelham. I mentioned before that part of this conformity exercise is not just looking at provincial policy documents and conforming, so aligning the town's policies with provincial policies, but also the newly approved regional OP. And key matters for consideration, which we're certainly looking at, is matters pertaining to climate change and helping the town to prepare for the impacts of a changing climate. And that's actually one of the big moves that we'll be talking about. Other matters that the town needs to focus on and make sure that they're planning for are the growth allocations and numbers related to development in terms of units and people. Other matters include watershed planning, protecting and enhancing the natural environment, and planning for aggregate resources. So the official plan review is contemplated to be a three-phase work program. We're currently in phase one, and this is the technical conformity review, and this is where we're here to help the town. The next phase, so the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the technical conformity review, but the next phase after this one is when the town rolls up its sleeves and starts to prepare the draft official plan. And finally, in phase three, which is towards the end of this year, early next year, is the finalization of the official plan. And we have a slide that speaks to engagement, but there are engagement opportunities that are contemplated in each of the three phases that you see there on the screen. So what are the components of the technical conformity review, and why are we here, Greg and I, to help Lindsay and Barb and the other team members of the town? Really, this is a really important component to phase one because ultimately the documents that we're producing will provide recommendations on changes that are required to bring the town's official plan into conformity with the provincial documents and the regional official plan that I spoke to before. There's also a bit of a discussion in a discussion paper that we'll talk about in a bit that go beyond just the conformity and consistency exercise that we're excited to talk to you about today. So our main deliverables as part of phase one include, and I alluded to this before, a background research report and a discussion paper. So the background research report took all the inputs from all those documents that we talked about before and did a bit of a SWOT analysis. We looked at some gaps in the official plan and highlighted some of those matters to be considered through the conformity and consistency exercise. The discussion paper, which we were super excited to work on, speaks to opportunities to enhance the official plan and go a little bit beyond the conformity and consistency exercise, and we actually provide some options and solutions for the town's consideration. It also builds on the background research that we prepared as part of that first deliverable, which was the background research report. So those are both completed, and we'll talk a little bit about the latter today. The next deliverable in the short term for us, working with Lindsay and Barb, is the technical conformity report. So that's going to be a document that provides a number of policy recommendations, both at a macro and micro level, for updating the official plan. It's going to summarize the findings based on and using the background research report discussion paper as a foundation and a jumping off point. So the technical conformity report will summarize everything in one document. And we will present that report to council sometime in the fall. And finally, there will be a conformity matrix, which will highlight the policy changes that I alluded to before. So the town has certainly been very busy, and this isn't the only work that they've been doing that will support and inform the official plan review and updated policies. The town, as you can see, there's quite a list on the screen. They've completed, have completed a number of studies, and there will be recommendations in some of these, if not all of them, that will help to inform the update to the official plan that we will consider, and the town will consider in the next phase. So as I mentioned before in the work program, each of the phases include touch points with various members of the public, including council. And what does that engagement program look like? Well, first and foremost, I'd like to take a step back and say, we know that engagement really is a critical component of the study process, and certainly in phase 1, but through the entire study program. So the town has put together a multi-pronged strategy to consult with key members of, with the public, but also with stakeholders, agencies, and town departments. So this is the first and only opportunity to provide input. There's going to be other opportunities planned through all 3 phases. So this is just the beginning, as Greg mentioned before, of the official plan review process. So what has been completed from an engagement perspective, what is ongoing, and what is planned in the future? The town has launched a great landing page with lots of information, and it's officially launched. You can access it now. The URL is there on the screen, or you can Google Engaging Pelham or Town of Pelham Official Plan Review, and you can find it, and there's lots of information there. The town has also started to engage with key agencies, the 3 key agencies, and Greg and I will be involved in some of those discussions. And Lindsay and Barb have already started to talk to members of the public, and they are available for discussions if people want to reach out. In terms of kind of short-term planned engagement events, we're going to talk at a very high level about the discussion paper today, but Greg and I will be working with the town to prepare a presentation with a bit more information on the highlights from that discussion paper, which will be pre-recorded and posted online on the project webpage. There will be more engagement opportunities and consultation events with other interested groups, including committee groups and advisory committees. Like I said before, we're going to be presenting the findings from the technical conformity report, and we'll be back to speak to you in the near future. And finally, there will be public open house events to engage members of the public with and put them in touch with policy planning staff. So we have essentially distilled our thoughts about the update to the official plan into 3 big moves, essentially. These are essentially 3 categories or thematic areas that most of our discussion is framed around. And those include supporting sustainable growth in complete communities, enhancing the town's agricultural system, and promoting a sustainable and climate resilient community. And really all 3 of these big moves include options for implementation for the town's consideration in the next couple of phases. So starting with supporting sustainable growth in complete communities, what does this mean? Really, it all ties back to what I mentioned before from a provincial policy perspective in the PPS down to the growth plan is really focusing on achieving and accommodating the growth that's anticipated in the next 30 years through intensification of existing urban areas and relying on that more so than greenfield development where possible. And concentrating that population and employment growth, because people like to focus on the residential component and sometimes forget about it, that there's also employment growth that's anticipated in the town, but concentrating that growth in the town's urban settlements of Fonthill and Fenwick, with the economic growth, with some economic growth in the agricultural sector. And we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. So while this is not an exhaustive list of all the options that we presented in the discussion paper, we thought we'd highlight a few. And so really, how can we achieve bullet number one? One way to intensify an existing urban area is to expand the number of housing options, looking at a variety of built form that's appropriate for the town, and really focusing on policies which support residential intensification. And there's quite a bit of a discussion in the discussion paper about how to achieve design excellence in public and private spaces. So as the town intensifies and maybe focuses a bit more on infill development, making sure that it's done in a way that is sensitive to the existing context. The second big move highlighted in the discussion paper, enhancing our agricultural system, really focuses on recognizing the town and the region's rich agricultural history. So what does this particular thematic area highlight? Well, really it's, how can the official plan support the preservation and maintenance of the town's existing agricultural assets? How can it diversify those uses in agricultural and rural areas? And in terms of some of the options presented in the discussion paper, it really does focus on ways in which the town can build on its existing policy framework to continue to protect and enhance the agricultural land base. And also it speaks to the agricultural food, the agri-food network. There's also a bit of a discussion around mineral aggregate resources. Finally, the third big move is about promoting a climate resilient community in the town. And so the discussion paper recognizes that, the future of livability in the town really depends on promoting a healthy natural and built environment, and one that is sustainable, climate resilient. It provides a few options in which the official plan can maybe be reframed a little bit to apply a climate lens to its policies, or maybe even have a standalone climate and sustainability chapter. And really this builds upon the provincial planning framework that speaks to planning for a changing climate and ways in which the town can do that. So given the changes to the provincial planning framework since the last update to the official plan, really the discussion paper speaks to really emphasizing just preparing for the variability of a changing climate. And focusing on being proactive rather than reactive to those impacts, and other ways in which the natural environment can be protected and enhanced through policy and matters such as updates to the official plan's mapping. So in terms of next steps, we talked about the pre-recorded presentations, so that's something to look forward to. We are actively working on preparing the technical conformity review report, which will include recommendations and conformity matrix. And we will be presenting, as I mentioned before, the technical conformity review report to council sometime in the fall, I believe. And I guess for those that are listening in, we encourage you to visit the project webpage and sign up. I believe there's a form or a way in which you can just input your email address, and that way you can stay up to date with engagement events as an example, or updates to the project webpage with information such as the presentation from today's meeting. And Greg, that's it for me.
Thanks very much, Andrea. So now I'm happy to turn this back over to council.
Hello, hello.
Sure, I'll just make some comments. So Craig, thanks so much for your presentation. it is preliminary. This entire review is preliminary, and same thing to Mr. Pett's comments. They're all taken under consideration, and we're starting this journey all over again since 2014. And weren't you an employee at 2014? Okay, sorry. Sorry about that, Greg. But it was being started on. Yeah, but no, just kidding aside. Your points are well taken. It is preliminary process. It will take a while. Whether there's ways through the Agricultural Committee or that. I like the fact in the big move that we are looking at agricultural initiatives very diligently and hard. Ants.
Behind the times with that restriction. And of course, with the price of land, especially in Pelham and especially in Niagara, it does seem unfair that you buy 10 acres and you only can use 3 acres of it. It doesn't seem. So hopefully we will work through that and resolve that issue substantially. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, none. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate your time. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or any other residents that would like to speak? Thank you, sir.
If you wouldn't mind actually turning on the microphone, thank you.
You're on.
I'm on. I am Jason Wieringa, and recognizing this is kind of high level, but also recognizing that public consultation is requested. I'm here to follow up with Craig about greenhouses and the 30% issue that we see. So I operate a farm outside of North Pelham with members of my family. My cousin's family and I are third-generation operators. We have a 14-acre farm with 83,000 square feet of greenhouses. We use these greenhouses year-round for the production of potted ornamental plants. However, greenhouse can be used for many things, and if the opportunity arises, we could do other crops. We could grow berries, we could grow fruits, vegetables. A greenhouse is quite flexible in its ability. This is my third time being involved with town council, and it's not my favorite thing to do. It's important that we continue to have another plot of land to expand our greenhouses when we reach that point of 30%. Even if our neighbor would sell us his land, 2 separate greenhouses would be wildly inefficient use of capital. The ongoing operational costs, input, and logistical efficiency would be well below the advantages realized in a single